Alright guys, today is going to be a little bit about me, I guess. So I was born in the South, and single mom, raising 3 kids. I was the youngest. I think we've gone over this. But I was taught respect your elders. I was taught if you're going to do something stupid, you got to pay the consequences for it. You stick your finger in a light socket, I guarantee you won't do it again. We were taught, we were let to do stupid things so we can learn not to do them again, if that makes sense. These kids today have been so coddled and very little discipline done to them, and a lot of that is the government's fault, because the government wants to step in and say you can't discipline your kids. They're wanting to arrest the parents for disciplining their kids. So, in my opinion, it's a little bit of the government's fault, but at the same time, it's also the parents' fault. Sometimes you're going to have to spank your kid, whether you want to or not. Putting him in timeout ain't going to cut it all the time. And these parents that find out their kids are bullying someone and then make them jog to school while they're driving, a lot of people are saying that's horrible to do, that's child abuse and all this. It's like, no. Back in the day, a lot of times if you knew a farmer, your kid went and worked on their farm for discipline. And if your kid popped off to the farmer and that farmer whooped his butt, then the farmer did it, the parent was okay with it. But at the same time, there is a difference in abuse, and abuse isn't always physical. So, but anyway, I never bullied anybody. There was always 2 or 3 guys in the school always messing with me. I mean, it's just what it is. They just didn't like me from the get-go. Not a big deal. I didn't care. When one of them started pushing and shoving me, I said, what is the problem? I mean, what did I do to mess with you? And he says he just didn't like me. And I said, that's fine. I don't like you, but at least I can keep my hands off of you. Are you gay or something? And that triggered some stuff, and yeah, it led to some bad stuff. But at the same time, he stopped messing with me after that, because everybody was like laughing that I called him gay. So it just, when you get bullied, you can either let it bug you or you can just let it go. And I heard a saying back in the day that anger is the worst kind of punishment, because you're angry at that person for something they said or did over virtually nothing. And you're putting yourself through all this torture and pain internally because you let somebody get under your skin. So, you know, it's either you can let them not bug you, or you're going to let everybody bug you. There's nothing you can do about it. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, you had to learn how to, you know, just let things go. And my wife gets so mad at me about this because I just let stuff roll. I don't hang on to things. If somebody was mean to me, I wish them a happy day and may God bless them and move on. And my wife's like, that was rude of her. I'm like, maybe I changed her day. You know? Because if there is an old saying, an eye for an eye will make the old world blind, but sometimes the world does have to go blind, because at a certain point, striking me, I have to stop it, otherwise I could end up going dead. So when somebody says, you know, violence is never a viable answer, I disagree, because if a bully's going to walk up and punch you in the face, how many times until he breaks your skull? How many times until you die from whatever he does to you? You have to put a stop to it, unless you like taking pain, because just talking to people sometimes just ain't going to cut it. So there is that. I don't know how many times I've tried to talk people out of messing with me, and they still took the first swing. So it is what it is. I studied martial arts for 5 years. And turned around and went. I did a little bit of bouncing. I've done security jobs. I've done other things because of the martial arts background. So, and if everybody wants to know what it is, the school initially said it was Aikido, Aikido, with other stuff mixed into it. Come to find out, it was actually Aiki-Jitsu. It's basically Aikido with a bunch of Jiu-Jitsu stuff mixed in with it, like Judo. We did a little bit of groundwork, Jiu-Jitsu. So we know how to strike, do all this stuff that most Aikido schools don't do. So we did stuff differently. If you stop and look at it, basically you do everything in a 45-degree angle, and your steps are in 45 degrees of center. So if me and you are standing facing each other, anytime you swing at me, I'm taking a 45 degree off your shoulders. So so that's what I do. we move in that direction all the time. And I'm not going to go into great details, but that's basically what we do. He is ex-military, so there was some military stuff thrown in there. So we had a pretty good teacher. And yes, it was pressure tested, because after the last 30 minutes of class, you had to do what was called a lineup. And if you got punched in the nose, it was your fault for standing there. We were learning this stuff on concrete and carpet. We didn't have pads. We didn't have mats. We didn't have, protective gear. We didn't wear helmets or anything like that. We didn't wear gloves. Nothing. And if you got popped, especially when we went in full contact, it was your fault for standing there. That's the way we learned. So a lot of people are saying it's a barbaric way. I disagree. But that's just the way I learned. Yes, I've used what I've learned. I've used it probably a handful of times, maybe 7, 8 times in my life. Yes, I've had knives pulled on me. I've even had a gun shoved in my face. I've been around the block with some of this stuff. So it's just, this is one reason why I'm trying to tell you guys about some of this. You can't go through life and expect nothing to ever happen to you. I got beat down with baseball bats when I was younger. That wanted me to get into martial arts. Plus, I loved, back in the days, there was Sundays from noon to 5, 6 o'clock, nothing but kung fu flicks on a certain channel. And I was fascinated with the martial art world at that point. And then when I started seeing ninjas and samurais and, not just kung fu and all this stuff, it got me hooked when I was a kid. My mom didn't want me learning it, but when I got old enough to make my own decisions to do it, I did it. So that's what that's what's going on. So yes, I've taught. I think it was for 4 years, and when I met my wife, some people wanted me to start teaching, so I did. And first it was out at a park. It was free. I mean, just anybody, it was word of mouth. People would show up and we'd go through and do basics. So that's a little bit of my martial arts history. Am I a badass? No. Am I, somebody that's gonna destroy anybody that comes in my way? No. I will kindly ask you not to do what you're doing and to move on, but I'm not going to ask you a second time. I'm going to tell you the second time, leave before things start happening. So, but you can't expect to walk around with ice cream and rainbows all day. The world doesn't work that way. Now, this part is where we get into where me and God, where I gave my life to God. When I was young, my grandfather was going through some ailments. He had pancreatic cancer. Went through some pretty rough times. And I went and talked to a pastor at the church we were going to at the time, and trying to make sense of it in my own way. And I found God that way. And I never really had a prayer answered as far as I knew. And I mean, there was literally like 6 years of nothing but bad stuff happening to me. So, so I thought God wasn't listening. So I stopped praying. I stopped going to church. And this was about the same time a buddy of mine invited me to their churches. And I saw some pretty messed up stuff in those churches. It was a Catholic church. You had to go downstairs to the school rooms, the Sunday school rooms. And he told me, whatever you see, just that's their faith. I said, okay. It's kind of weird to me, but a nun came out of a room with a wooden dowel that was broken in 3 places. There was a kid in there pulling his pants up, and he was without a shirt, crying, and welts all over it. I was like, that's not right. That's child abuse. That made me uncomfortable, but I went ahead and sat through the Sunday school thing. We went upstairs into the main chapel, and beautiful marble carvings in the walls and everything. The problem I had, and I told myself I would never go back to that church, and I never did. There was a carving of the pastor standing behind the pulpit and 2 altar boys' head underneath the pulpit. And my mind went directly to some bad things. And I'm like, and when you looked at the story the engraving went around to tell, it was all leading to that. And I understand gargoyles on the outside of churches to ward away evil. I get that. But you don't have gargoyles inside the church too, as far as I know. Now, if I'm wrong about this stuff, 100% correct me. I'll admit I was wrong. But that stuff just did not set right with me. There was a lot of bad stuff going on there. And then the next friend that invited me to go to a It was a Bible study thing on a Monday, and I got called in, which Mondays were normally my day off. I got called in, so I couldn't go. He turned around and told me he was glad that I didn't go, because this was the first time he went too. And basically, the Bible study turned into an orgy. And I was like, I'm not going to that church ever again. And after that, I really stopped going to church. I stopped reading the Bible. I stopped talking to God. Just a lot of bad things were going on. And where I got back with God was 2 years ago. I just had my limit. My body hurts. I've got a left shoulder that dislocates from time to time. I've got a bad left knee from where the kneecap got separated. I've been hit by a van, and my lower back is giving me issues. On top of that, my wife is disabled. She has a damaged spine and degenerating hip. So I'm doing a lot of extra lifting and stuff for her, which I love my wife and I'll do it anyway. That's not the problem. But paying for everything has become, I don't know how we're doing it. I don't know how we're making it. Because by our calculations, we shouldn't be making it with what I make. There's no way I should be able to pay all the bills right now. And with her disability and with my paychecks, we're able to pay the bills and have a little bit left over. And I really don't know how we're making it. The only thing I can say is thank God, glory to God, and hallelujah that He's helping us. That's the only thing I can figure out. But what turned me to God was I ran across Bo Pony on YouTube, talking about gold, silver, things like this, the economy turning to garbage, and all these things. And he got on with a lady named Julie Green on Rumble. So, and Julie Green is a prophet of the Lord. So I started listening to her more, and I literally broke down. I said, I don't understand why you would still love me after all the time that we had apart. And that's when I felt it. I felt God's touch on the top of my head, wrapped me in warmth all the way down to my toes. Now, this was in November when it was pretty cold out. And I felt warm the entire time on my way home. Like He was holding me the entire time. So, I don't know. I don't know the day, the hour, the second, but when I turned to God. But that day let me know that God loves me. So that's where I'm at. And I pray to God 2-3 times a day. And that's why I'm making these videos. I want you guys to start praying 2 or 3 times a day and let God touch your life. Okay? So be safe, be kind to each other, and pray. Pray. You guys have a good night. Love you guys.